Hello. Well, it's the 26th of February today, and that's not a bad time to be starting some tomatoes. Now, because we are grafting our own tomatoes this year, we've got to sow a rootstock and the varieties. I'm going to start the rootstock today, and I will start the varieties in 3 or 4 days' time. So I thought what I'd do first is just go through the varieties that we're growing this year. Now I've got 16 varieties here. Generally speaking, I don't grow hybrids or very few hybrids. In a normal year, I might grow 2. One would be a hybrid corn. The other will be a tomato, Sungold, and usually those are the only 2 hybrids that we grow. This year, of course, because I'm grafting the tomatoes, I'm also sowing a hybrid rootstock, and that rootstock is Estamino. So that is a generative type of rootstock, and I'm hoping that one will be quite suitable for use in our greenhouses. So it shouldn't put on a mass of vegetation. So I do grow Sungold, and that one's not really my cup of tea, to be honest. It is sweet and it's okay, but I think that there are many tomatoes that, to my taste, are much better. But my wife really likes them, and she'll just go down to the greenhouse and pluck a few straight from the plant and eat them as a snack, and that's fine. So we grow 1 plant usually of Sungold. So usually we tend to grow more large fruited sorts than small tomatoes, though this year we've got quite a few small ones, which is a little bit unusual for us. I've got 2 German varieties here. The first one is Blondkopfchen. Now that's an East German heirloom, and that produces quite reasonable bunches of small yellow tomatoes. Now we have grown that one before, but it was quite some years ago, and I can't really remember what we thought of it. So I thought I would grow that one again. So the second one from Germany is Riesentraube. I've not grown that one before, but it's supposed to produce quite substantial trusses of small red fruits. We usually have some of the dark fruited sorts. I haven't grown a dark fruited tomato that we didn't like. So they would be things like Black Russian, Black Crim, Cherokee Purple, and all of those have a really fantastic rich flavour that we like. So we've got Black Crim again this year, and I think for the rest of these seeds I've got these from one of 2 places, either Seeds of Italy in the larger seed packets here, or then from a company I've never used before, Tuttosemi, that means all seeds, and from them I managed to get some of the more obscure varieties from Italy, as well as a few other different seeds. Now I've used Seeds of Italy many times, so I'm quite happy to recommend their seeds. To be honest, I don't know anything about Tuttosemi, except they happen to have some of the varieties I was searching for. I just found them on the web. We'll find out later in the year whether that was a good buy or not. So along with Black Crim, which we've grown many times, a new one for me is Black from Tula. Now I've read good things about that, and I don't doubt that that will be another fine dark tomato. They're never actually black, of course. They're just much darker than the normal red tomato. They'll be a sort of dusky browny colour, I'm sure. Then I've got 1 French variety, Pierre. I've grown this one many times before. In some ways it doesn't stand out. It's a fairly typical looking salad tomato, but it does have a good old-fashioned flavour, and I think if you were looking for a good flavoured salad tomato, this wouldn't be a bad place to start. It's a little bit less interesting, I think, than some of the other varieties, but it's still a good, solid tomato. So now on to the Italian varieties. The first one is Principe Borghese. Now, this one produces fairly small tomatoes. They're larger than a cherry tomato, but smaller than a plum sort. And they're oval fruits. Not too many seeds. They are good for cooking with and a classic tomato for sun drying. Now, we've grown that one quite a few times and it always performs reasonably well. So one that we haven't grown before, but we've grown something similar, is Pantano. Now, this comes from the Rome region, and you may be able to see in the picture there that it has some green about the shoulders. Now, there's quite a few of the old tomatoes that don't ripen uniformly, and I certainly don't see that as a defect. It's part of the character of the tomato. Then we've got one of the Oxheart varieties. This one we have grown before. So that produces some fairly large, very meaty tomatoes with a fantastic flavour. And then I've got one of the pear-shaped tomatoes. So this one's just called Red Pear. And this is a selection from Frankie themselves. So this one comes from Bergamo. You can find a tomato that looks very much like this from various regions of Italy. So we haven't grown this specific one before, but we've grown its type many times, and I'm expecting that to be a very tasty tomato. And then on to my less common ones. Now, one of these we have grown before. So we've got another pear type, this one from Albenga, that's from Liguria, so again from the northern part of Italy, and that is a fantastic pear tomato. So they will probably be very similar. The rest are all quite regional sorts. So the first one I have here is Belmonte. Now, this comes from Calabria, and there are actually two tomatoes with this name. The one I've got is the costoluto, so that means ribbed. So this forms supposedly particularly large, slightly ribbed fruit, and is said to have an excellent flavour. I've then got three varieties that come from Campania. The first one I've got is Rosa di Sorrento. So that makes quite a good sized pink skinned tomato. I've then got Piennolo del Vesuvio. That is a small fruited red tomato. It has quite a distinctive shape. It's kind of oval with a pointy bit on the bottom. Then I've got Corbarino. That's also quite a distinctive shape. It's a bit like one of the pear-shaped tomatoes. So that again is on the small side. And the final variety is Canistrino De Luca. Now that is in northern Tuscany, and this one is quite specific to the region around Lucca. So if all goes well with the sowing and the grafting, then that's the varieties we're going to be growing this year, and I'm really excited to be trying some of these other regional Italian varieties, and we'll see how they compare to our old favourites. So all I'm going to be sowing today are the rootstocks. Now these come as pelleted seeds, and I was really debating what to start the seeds in. Normally we would start them in small pots directly, probably a 7 centimetre square pot. But because we've got to sow the rootstocks and the varieties, and we want quite a few tomatoes this year, that is a lot of pots. and that would take up a lot of propagator space, and that's quite a precious resource. So this year I was debating whether to start in seed trays or cell trays, and I ended up coming down in favour of small cells. So that's where I'm going to start both the rootstocks and the varieties. There are two variables this year that I'm not familiar with. One is the rootstock. So I've never sown a tomato rootstock before, and these are pelleted seed, and it's many years since I sowed anything that came pelleted. I don't know what the germination rate of these will be, but I'm assuming it's going to be pretty good. Now, I need quite a lot of plants this year. Somewhere around 50 would be ideal. But the other big variable is how successful the grafting will be. And I need to allow for a few failures there in case things don't go quite as well as I'd like. So I think I'm going to start by sowing 90 of the rootstocks, and that should give me plenty of plants to work with later. And I will probably sow somewhere around 70 of the actual varieties. So these trays have got 60 cells, so I will sow one tray entirely, and then I will sow half of this tray, and later on I will put some varieties in the other half. I've got a little arrow on the plant label to remind me which half I've sown in, because I doubt very much whether any of these will show up before I stick the varieties in. So it's just the usual business of just making a small depression in the cells, and then I'm going to drop one of these pelleted seeds in each depression, then just top off with a small amount of further compost, and then give them a water. Now I did give these cells a water yesterday, and they've been indoors overnight, so they've warmed up, so I'm not sowing into cold compost. And with these, I'm just going to pay a little bit of attention to make sure that they are right in the center of the cells. Right, so all I'm going to do now is just sprinkle the top of these with a little more of the compost. Being quite careful not to move it around too much and dislodge them from the center of the cells. So normally if the soil underneath has been watered well, you don't necessarily have to water the soil that you've just topped them with. In this case I'm going to, because I'm assuming that those coated seeds will appreciate a drop of water to hydrate whatever that coating is. So I'll just give these a drop of water. So that's all I'm going to do with this for now. I will come back to these in 3 or 4 days time and sow the varieties. These are going to go into a propagator indoors. I will set that to 21 or 22 degrees, something like that. A little cooler than I would have for peppers and chilies, and that should be fine for germinating tomatoes. Now, when a reasonable proportion of these have germinated, I will probably then move these trays down to the greenhouse where the light levels are a bit better. Hello. Well, it's the 1st of March today, and today I'm going to start the tomato varieties. Now, I already sowed the rootstocks just 3 days ago, but quite a few of them are already up. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but we've got some have germinated already, and I expect the others will follow suit quite soon. I hadn't expected to see those for another couple of days yet, so that's encouraging. So this is the tray that I half sowed with rootstocks, and then I've got another full tray of rootstocks in the propagator. So today I'm just going to sow the varieties that I hope to then graft onto these rootstocks. So I've got all the labels ready, and I've got a list here of the quantities I need for each type. So for those where I've got lots of seed, I might pop in a couple of seed in each cell and thin those later. Those where the seed is a little bit precious, I will sow just a single seed per cell and then sow 1 or 2 spare cells, and hopefully that way I will end up with exactly the number of tomatoes I really need at the end. So the first one is Sungold, and it's the only hybrid that I will be growing. I only actually need 1 plant of this. I'm going to sow, I'll sow 2 cells though, with a couple of seed in each, and that should guarantee that I'll get at least 1 good plant out of that. Ideally I'd want 2 plants here so that I can graft them, and then hopefully at least 1 of the grafts will take. That's the idea. So this year, because I haven't grafted my own tomatoes before, I'm having to sow a little bit more seed than I normally would. So the next one is Riesentraube. Now there's plenty of seed of this one. These are all open pollinated now, so apart from those special ones that I tracked down from Italy, there should be plenty of seed of these. So three cells for this one. Right, so just like before, I'm just going to cover these cells with a little more compost. Right. I'll just give them some water, just the new cells. Okay, now I'm going to pop these straight back into the propagator. So first one here is Canistrino De Luca, and I really like Lucca and the surrounding area, so this one I'm particularly keen on. Right, that should be fine. So I did water this compost a few days ago, but of course it's dried out pretty much since then, so this needs a really good soaking. Right, I will get this in the propagator with the others. Now, I've never done this before, so I'm a little bit unsure of the timings. Most sources seem to suggest that the rootstocks should be sown a few days before the varieties. But of course these are old open pollinated varieties, and I'm sure most of that guidance assumes a modern hybrid variety. Whether that makes much difference to the initial germination time and the initial development of the seedling, I'm not so sure. So I'm a little bit nervous of the timing aspect of it, because I've got to get these, both the rootstock and the seedling, to a point where the diameters of the stems are compatible. They need to be almost exactly the same size. So if you're grafting fruit trees, which is something I've done before, a difference in the size of material doesn't matter. You just do a slightly different graft. There's no real option on stuff that's this small. So those stems somewhere along the length of each plant, they have to match up so that the graft will be a good fit. So that aspect I'm really quite worried about. If it goes disastrously wrong, then of course I won't be grafting these at all, and these will just be the tomatoes I'll pot on and grow as normal. But I'm really hoping that the rootstock and the Scion that we've sown today will be reasonably compatible. I hope so. At least it would be good if I could graft some of the plants, if not all of them. And if it works out reasonably well, then of course I'll learn from this experience and be able to do a better job of it next time. So we'll have to see what happens. I don't think anything is going to happen for at least a few weeks now, at least 2 weeks, and possibly 3 or 4. Once the plants are grafted, they then need a period of mothering while they get a little bit upset at their brutal treatment. And that takes maybe a couple of weeks before they're back up to speed. And that would probably put us into maybe mid-April. And that would be the perfect time to have some young grafted plants in good condition to grow away. But time will tell. It's going to be a slightly tense month or two while we see how this experiment works out. But that's it for this stage. So thanks for watching and bye for now.